Welcome to another episode of Police Off the Cuff After Hours. I'm your host. My name is Mark DeMeo. Sitting in tonight as my co-host is Mike, the Prodigy Cologne. What's up, buddy?
Thank you. I regret the nickname Prodigy. I don't think I'm very deserving of it, but I'm honored to be here.
You're living in it. You're living in it. Mike has a great podcast called Mike in New Haven. We'll mention that again later on in the show. I'm very excited because one of my favorite guests, Bill and I were doing this show for a couple of years. And one of my favorite guests of all time was our guest tonight. She is a professor and chair at John Jay College of Criminal Justice. She's an author. I'm very proud to have her back. Thank you, Dr. Maria Maki Haberfeld.
Thank you for having me. Nice to hear all these beautiful words that are coming out of your mouth now. I feel already taller and stronger. I will straighten my back as I sit. Okay.
You're not in school, are you?
No, I'm not in school. No.
All right. So tell us a little bit about your area of expertise for the people that are seeing you now for the first time.
So for whatever reason that is sort of esoteric, I devoted my life to the police profession. I was a police officer in Israel, came here to serve in the office of Israeli police representative in New York, and decided to stay, got my PhD from John Jay. Since then published 21 books on police-related issues, primarily on training and ethics. Do a lot of comparative stuff on policing with different police departments around the world: China, Norway, Finland, Poland, Israel. Love policing, love law enforcement. At the same time, I like to see myself as somebody who's not blind. I do recognize that there are issues with policing, in policing. So as much as you will hear me speak very highly of police officers, you also will hear me say things that not everybody will like, but that's me, You will hear what you see what you hear.
Well, you know what? For doing what you're doing right now, this is I can't imagine a more interesting time to do what you do right now, because the policing it's evolving and changing daily. It's gone back and forth. It started off with defund the police last year, and now if you're running for office in 2022, the furthest thing you want to do is they're all trying to get away from that defund the police, even Minneapolis right now.
Yeah, but I don't know if it's the smart thing to disagree with the host just in the first few minutes of the broadcast, but I'm going to do it.
Go ahead.
It's not interesting at all. It's depressing, and I tell you why. Because, as I said, I devoted my life to this profession, and I'm saying profession, right? Profession that has a body of literature and research, empirical research behind. Yet in the last year and a half, everybody on the street, basically everybody, had an opinion about how police should proceed and how it should be reimagined and how it should be redone. People who have zero qualifications, right? Zero understanding. We're taking face values, and us, myself and my colleagues, nobody's asking us. So when you devote your life to something and you consider it as yourself a social scientist, and suddenly, somebody selling, hot dogs on the corner knows more about policing than you do, according to various, politicians.
So nobody reached out to you? None of these people wanted to get like an expert's opinion on what should we do?
I have to tell you that it's been now almost a year and a half. I heard once from Governor Cuomo's office, once, never again. A couple of times from North Carolina, a couple of times from California. That's it. And I am the most published person in this field in the country. And, I try to be modest, but I will drop this modesty for a moment. I'm the most published person on the field of police training in the world. And yet I've heard maybe from 5 entities. Maybe I'm saying things that they don't want to hear, but that's why it's so depressing.
Do you think, how much of it do you think has to do with the money? My opinion, or the idea that I have, is that I think that law enforcement takes up a big piece.
There's money in COVID vaccine as well. But can you imagine giving the vaccine to somebody, to develop the vaccine to somebody who would charge less than Pfizer, Moderna, or Johnson & Johnson, right? Just somebody who would pay less. We wouldn't be having the conversation today. We'll all be dead, right? We are social scientists. I'm not just speaking about myself. I have colleagues who do research on policing. We know what needs to be done. So money or no money, when there is a problem, there's an issue, you reach out to people with expertise. You don't ask people on the street how they want to reimagine policing.
Is it a coincidence that certain states have all jumped? Well, they did jump on it on the defunded vaccine. Oh, the blue states jumped on it all collectively. What was the vision there? That's
the thing. I don't think there was any vision. I think this was just an ad hoc reaction, to pressure. How do we stop the demonstrations, right? How do we pacify people who are out there on the streets and demand things? We don't do it in an informed way. We don't do it in a scientific way. We just promise something that sounds good. I mean, whoever came up with this phrase, reimagining policing, I know, certainly not an academic, certainly not a scientist. And they run with it. And I think it's out of fear. I don't think it's out of any real desire to change things. And we are seeing it now that they were supposed to come up to some bipartisan agreement about changing policing. In the last few days, they decided, no, there's no agreement. So basically, there was a lot of noise, a lot of ideas that made no sense whatsoever, right? You cannot send social workers to an active shooter situation. I mean, and yet, people are so convinced and so validated with the most bizarre, irrational ideas that they put up there. I mean, to me, that's what I'm saying. What a frustration, ultimate frustration.
Mike?
Yeah.
Well, I was going to ask you, you bring up interesting points there, Maki. I remember seeing a story right before the pandemic hit that was shot by Jessica Layton, a great reporter for CBS New York, in which she covered the NYPD's homeless outreach unit, I should say, in which these officers would go down, talk to these individuals, most of whom did suffer from mental health problems, and try to get them to come into a shelter for the night. And they had some success in that report. I don't know if they had success overall. I don't know what the statistics would show. But when situations like that, when you're talking about using resources and things of that nature, and of course having some sort of positive interaction to a large extent with the community and being on the same page, is that a gray area for you, or does it have its purpose?
Listen, any cop will tell you, take away the homeless from us, take away the people with mental diseases and challenges. No cop will say, no, we want to handle this. Nobody wants to be a cop to handle homeless people and people with mental health issues. So I am the first one to say there is room, there's plenty of room to reassign certain functions, certain responsibilities to other units, to other organizations. But the moment the homeless person or the mentally challenged person, they starts behaving in a violent manner, this is when each and every out of social workers will call the police. No doubt about this. So yes, you do need corresponding units, but it's also very, costly. You cannot have enough social workers on standby each time there is a call for a homeless person who is misbehaving. I walked the streets of Manhattan during COVID, and I saw some things that it literally broke my heart. I'm seeing this homeless individual, trying to rip. There was still one public phone out there on the streets of Manhattan, probably the last one left. Mm-hmm. And I'm seeing this homeless person trying to rip it out, very violent, banging. Suddenly, two cops from the homeless outreach unit materialize. Sir, how can we help you? How are you, sir? And of course, you could see that they had no clue. The guy is violent. The guy is ready to hit everybody. they didn't even have the proper training to deal with him. So in this particular case, I felt bad for the cops. I felt bad for the guy. There was no proper response to create a response. Wow, you have no clue how much money you will need to create an adequate response, especially in Manhattan.
I always bring this up on the show. When I was on the job, especially when we were doing that time of stop, question, and frisk, and people were going through the system a lot. And one of the things that people don't realize, the average person doesn't realize, is a lot of the people that are homeless or out in the street, they're medicated, and you leave them out there long enough without their meds, and a lot of them suffer from schizophrenia and things like that, violent mental illnesses, and sometimes getting into the system, you get asked 5 times at least before you're actually in the tombs. Are you on any medication? And at some point they're going to tell you, and then they're going to re-up on your medication, and then you get 3 square meals a day, and you get to sleep a little bit, and you get to recharge. And a lot of that's not happening. You're seeing these people that are out there and they're unhinged because they're off their meds, and there's nobody coming to ask them if you need a refill. You know what I'm saying?
Listen, when I was a doctoral student, I got a stipend. I worked for a year in a homeless center in Midtown Manhattan. It was 3rd Avenue and 43rd, something like that. Midtown Partnership. I think they still exist. Anyway, I've seen the variety of issues there. And again, I'm not a psychiatrist. I'm not a trained social worker, but I do have a little bit of background, given what I've done in my life. These are profound social problems that cannot be solved by a cop on the street. It's not going to be solved by sending a social worker with the cop. You need a serious infrastructure for this. And I'm saying infrastructure, because what I'm saying. This is not creating some corresponding unit, especially not in cities like New York or San Francisco or Los Angeles, where you're dealing with numbers that are beyond reach, beyond ability. This is a serious social problem. And looking for money to solve this problem, don't look at the police. Look in other places, because cutting money from the police is not going to solve this problem, but going to create new problems for the police.
Yeah, that's true.
So these calls are completely misguided to defund the police. Completely.
Hey, you know what? This is talking about policing and all that stuff. Before we do that, let me just give a shout out to the people that are in the chat right now. Dawn Marie, she says, welcome Joe Kane to the Police Off the Cuff family membership. Thank you, Joe Kane. Olivia Handebra, there's going to be some soon federal list. Oh, she's talking about the case. There's going to be a federal arrest. Bill is very involved with the true crime, and they're covering the case. What's that case, Mike?
Gabby Petito.
Yeah. Joe Murray, he's on. He says, hi Diane B, hi Boxing MMA, Factual Breakdown. Hello. Kim Holmes, hello. Gail Dennison, hello from Sacramento County Sheriff's Department. Uses mental squads in their patrol division. A specialty trained psychologist rides with the deputy. So she's basically saying in Sacramento County Sheriff's Department, they use a mental squad. And what's funny is that you're going to ride in the back of the car with, you're going to have a psychiatrist, a clinician, and then you should probably put somebody that knows jiu-jitsu, just in case there's some physical altercation. You have somebody who's allowed to take them down and wrap them up.
I think I told you when I was a guest on your show last year that in Israel we had a time in my unit that we tried to use some psychologists with us, and we left one of the psychologists in a room with the suspect. When we came back, the psychologist was asleep, and suspect was looking at his file. Policing, I don't have to tell you. It's a work that requires certain skills. I am not saying that all these skills cannot be taught. Most of them can be taught, but some are skills that are in us, that stay with us, whether we were cops 50 years ago or we are cops now.
I always used to say,
psychologists, different brand of people, different type with different skills. The corresponding teams are good, but again, not realistic for the volume that we have here in New York. Not realistic.
Well,
cost-wise.
I think there's probably a couple of clinicians that are out there that are just, would be great. But there's also a lot of them that are, academics. They're not, maybe they're not physically trained or they're not armed. The bottom line is they're not armed. That's the scariest part of it all.
Yeah. What do you do when the homeless person becomes violent? What do you do? Say, stop. Let me call the cops now. Stop. Don't pull out the knife on me. Wait until the cops arrive. Or let me call the cops who are behind me. Now they will take over, right? I mean, what kind of message does it send in general? You're a psychologist, a social worker. The moment you are not effective in controlling the individual, stepping back and letting the cops take it from there. I mean, you know what I'm saying? This is a little bit unfair, I would say, right?
Well, I want to show you.
You messed up the situation,
and
now let the cops clean it up.
Yep. I want to show you just how far these laws have gone. I'll show you a little clip here. This is a homicide that happened, and the suspect, he ran into the woods, and they couldn't even chase him. Or they wanted to send canine, but they didn't have probable cause.
Last night, when deputies got here, there was no suspect. They were told by witnesses that the suspect ran off into the woods that way, and with no clear description, they say there was really nothing they could do.
Shooting occurred over here next to these trees.
A day after a deadly shooting in this developed parking lot, and deputies don't have anyone in cuffs. Sergeant Darren Moss says it didn't have to be that way.
It's just unfortunate that in this specific incident, we weren't able to use every single tool available to us at the time.
10:20 p.m. Wednesday, several calls to 911 reporting shots fired outside this home. Deputies find a young man dead in the parking lot. Are told a shooter ran east. Don't have a description.
We don't know who the victim is. We don't know who the suspect is. So we don't have probable cause when we show up.
A K-9 unit arrives on scene, but a supervisor makes the call to not use it.
Although personally we'd feel reward from catching the suspect. We don't want any of our officers to be disciplined or fired or decertified or charged criminally or civilly for violating the new laws.
Pierce County Sheriff's Department is now the latest to make it clear to the public that the rules are changing, citing a new package of laws signed by the governor in May intended to limit the needless use of force by law enforcement, a byproduct of last summer's police brutality protests. Specifically, House Bill 1310, which says that law enforcement now needs probable cause before using any force. Representative Roger Goodman is one of the bill's backers.
But from the majority of police agencies, particularly in my area, they say we understand the legislature's intent. We agree with the intent to use less force.
Goodman says he has heard complaints, but says these bills were drafted alongside law enforcement and says many departments were already implementing these changes internally before the law was even enacted.
The rules of engagement may change a little bit when they do show up because we want to focus on de-escalation.
As for Wednesday night's deadly shooting, the Pierce County Sheriff's Department is now turning to the public. If you have any information, you're asked to contact investigators. From Puyallup, Sebastian Robertson, King 5.
Oh my God. What do you think of that, Maki?
Listen, I don't like the word de-escalation because it's really a very poorly misunderstood word. First of all, when somebody has a gun or a knife or any sharp object that can possibly hurt you, the de-escalation concept.
Hold on 1 second.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt, but the commercial customizes your car insurance, so you only pay for what you need.
I actually know that commercial.
Hold on 1 second. We'll get rid of that one. All right. Back to you. Sorry about that. That's always good.
You know, de-escalation. NYPD is doing de-escalation training, has been doing de-escalation training long before George Floyd, right? We've been doing verbal judo since 1994, since the Rodney King case. For verbal judo de-escalation, the same thing. For almost 25 years, police departments are engaged in de-escalation, verbal judo, using less force. It's not about using less force. It's about each and every situation is different. You cannot just hold on to the word de-escalate without contextualizing what you're talking about. Somebody has a gun, somebody has a knife, somebody has a hammer. I am sorry, you don't have the moral right to demand from the cops to put their life out there in danger when somebody is pointing a gun at them, right? And try to ask, I remember doing research in Charlotte, North Carolina years ago, over 2 decades ago, and one of the cops told me, today, and I'm saying it was 2 decades ago, that today, if somebody is, is violent with me, I am told I have to stop and ask politely, sir, ma'am, what happened this morning that caused you to behave like this? I mean, you're laughing, but if that person has the capacity to hurt you or hurt others, you cannot take the situation to the point where cops' lives are not valued anymore, right? Everybody's life is important here. The person who misbehaves, the police officer, the bystander, but with this de-escalation concept, the only life that's not important is the cop's life. That's at least in my view.
I think there's a sentiment that it's a symbol, the police, that they're not really, I saw that they're not real people. Like I saw a situation during the riots here in New York where somebody threw a bottle or something at the cop and it hit him. He was walking back to his car and the guy fell down to the cop and he was hurt. And you could hear, because they were filming it, somebody goes, "Oh shit!" Like I don't know what in their mind thought was going to happen when they hit another human being with a blunt object, right in the head.
Throwing Molotov cocktails at police cars, and you know what can happen. You can basically, people can get up in fire. I mean, I've written about this again. This is long before George Floyd. How can we allow people to throw buckets of water at police officers? Right? How can we allow this in New York City? How can we allow this in a democratic country?
They're lighting you up when you sit in the van. They try to light 2 vans up. There's cops sitting in the van, and there's somebody coming over there trying to light it on fire.
And you're saying somebody, it was a lawyer, NYU educated lawyer, female, who was caught with Molotov
you're talking about during the riots, but I'm talking about just recently it happened again.
During the riots, I mean, doesn't matter. How an NYU educated lawyer has it in herself to hold a Molotov cocktail that she wants to throw at a police car. And again, it makes news for 5 seconds, and then we forget about this. As I said, cops' lives, not of great value to the media, apparently. Because God forbid, if a case like this, if a police officer had put a citizen on fire, can you imagine? This would be a case for us to study for the next 20 years, from middle school up to PhD in colleges. Yet cops are attacked on a daily basis. Nobody cares. There's a mention, and that's it. And we continue to talk about how to improve policing. How about we talk about how to improve citizenship?
I know. Huh? I know. You're right.
How to teach people how to treat police officers.
The decline of modern society.
It's decline of morals and values. When people allow themselves to physically attack law enforcement officers just for doing their job. I'm not talking about specific case when there's something happening again that police officers should not be doing. I can see the rage evolving, but just at random, come to police officer, throw a bucket of water, throw a Molotov cocktail at the van. I never thought that I will see such things in the United States, and that's why I said from the start, I don't see that these are interesting. I don't see it as interesting times. It's very depressing to me. Who wants to be a cop today? Who wants to be a cop today? Huh?
I know.
We want better. You want to better the profession?
You should.
want better people. Who wants to be a cop today?
You should fail the the psychological test just for the fact that you got that far.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Like, what's the matter with you?
Yeah.
Something has to be wrong with you.
Yeah.
Don't you watch the news?
You want to be a cop. I wanted to be a police officer because it was very clear for me. I mean, that the people who are doing the wrong things and people who are doing the right things. I wanted to stop people who are doing the wrong thing. Today, if somebody wants to be a police officer, they're probably thinking about their early retirement and benefits. They don't want, because really, with all this pushback, demonizing the profession, I don't know. I mean, I really don't see this as something that's going to fade like in the next few months or in the next few years. We're going to pay the price for what happened in the last year, for years to come, in terms of quality of policing in this country.
You think so, huh?
I know so. I know so because I talk to officers from all over the country frequently. Most of them want to retire. Most of them want to change the profession. The ones who don't want, again, I challenge what is the rationale behind not wanting to. I wouldn't want to be in a profession that people come to me and spit at me and throw water at me. Why? They don't pay enough, you know? I mean, that's what's happening.
I agree with you, but it has a way of turning around literally not even overnight in 1 second. Because when I was on the job, I remember how quick it changed after 9/11.
Oh, yeah.
It didn't last long. You know, it lasted maybe 6 months if you really wanted to drag it out. The first couple of months, though, everybody was thank you for your service and let them cut the line and I got your coffee.
Yeah.
And, you know, of course, we're going to go back to reality. But
do you want a disaster of that magnitude?
No, and I'm not saying it, but they happen. And right now with, you know, all these things that are happening, you know, with the pull out of Afghanistan, the open border, with them, those people coming in unchecked, they're going to be settling in over here and creating all their, you know, whatever they want to do bad to us. You know what I'm saying? I have a feeling like in the not too distant future, everybody's going to change their mind again because, you know, things are going to pop off, they say.
Yeah, but at the same time, look, all these new responsibilities for the police, like checking, you know, whether or not you have the mask or whether you have the vaccination. This does not add to the improved police community, you know, trust and relationship. When cops need to check whether you have vaccinations.
Well, let's talk about that a little bit. The incident in Manhattan.
Right.
So, for those unfamiliar, not paying attention to the news, there was a group of people from Texas. They went to Carmine's restaurant. The ladies walked in first. They had their vaccination cards. And then a couple of minutes later, the gentleman followed, but they didn't have the cards, so they weren't allowed in. That pissed the women off, and they came out, and there was a confrontation with the hostess there. And now, and there's always more to the story, but apparently, you know, so Black Lives Matter comes there and disrupts a dinner one night. I have a hard time. To me, all these things are staged. That's the way I feel about it.
Well, whether they stage or not, it's sort of secondary to the fact that police now, law enforcement has yet another impossible function to respond to, right? Mm-hmm. Because there are ways that when I teach my students about the role of the police, I said, you know, there are different ways the police can approach a problem. A problem can be approached and solved, right? When you're speeding, you're getting somebody a ticket. For this particular moment, you solve the problem, huh? But then there are problems that cannot be solved by the police, like domestic violence. So arresting one spouse is not going to solve the domestic violence problem beyond the moment of the arrest. And this mask enforcement or vaccination enforcement, it's not going to lead to anything good in terms of police-community relations. Because at the end, they're going to take it out on the police, that the police are enforcing it in one way or the other against certain community, right? That they're not enforcing it. And it's all these issues that should not be the task and responsibilities of the police. Remember when COVID started, first de Blasio said he wanted NYPD to enforce the masks. And then we had some issues on the streets. Remember that the police were, again, excessive use of force against certain communities, not keeping the social distance, and then they dropped it because they realized that that's yet another Pandora box that they're opening, that there is no need for this. But now they're back.
Yeah, and well, with the vaccine mandates too, with the restaurants, we'll bring up that point. We're at the midway point of the show. I just wanted to do, since Joe Murray's in the chat, I just wanted to give him a shout out over here. Folks, I'm going to let Mike Colon read this one. He does it really well.
Well, you know what I like to say. If you need a lawyer, if you're in a pinch, hurry and call my friend, Joe Murray. Joe Murray will help anybody in the greater New York area. If you need a lawyer for anything, we hope you don't get in trouble. But if you are, don't call anybody else. Call our friend, Joe Murray. His cell phone is 718-514-3855. Again, 718-514-3855. You want to reach him at his office? Go right ahead, 646-838-1702. Again, 646-838-1702. Or email him, joe@jmurray-law.com. Again, joe@jmurray-law.com. Again, if you need a lawyer, don't call these ambulance chasers. Hurry and call my friend, Joe Murray.
That rhymed. That's good.
Thank you.
Folks, Police Coffee is an officer-owned business dedicated to crafting the finest coffees and blends. They are made to provide with the freshest coffee available. Each batch is roasted fresh by people who know what it means to stay vigilant. And our specialty in coffee, they don't waste a drop in flavor where it's concerned. Our coffee is the best that you'll find. And the most important thing is all the proceeds go, 50% of the profits goes to helping families of members of police officers who fell in the line of duty. So to order K9 coffee, to order the coffee and related products from the policecoffee.com, go to the website, policecoffee.com. There are over 7 different types of coffee to choose from. 50% of the profits go to officers' family in need. For a 10% discount, use the OTC10 code there. Those are our sponsors, folks. And listen, I'll bring this up right now. If you're in the mood to laugh, pick up my album. It's called The Bangers. You can pick it up anywhere where streaming, iTunes, you name it. What's the other ones? Mike, help me out here.
Spotify, Spreaker.
Yeah, there you go. All of them. And if you have a car and you got Sirius XM in your car, you can listen to me in there. So that's my album. It's dropped. It's doing pretty well. I'm getting a lot of positive feedback. It was recorded during the pandemic. I should have invited you, Maki. I don't know why I didn't. I'm horrible at that kind of stuff.
I wanted to slip in real quick and ask Maki a couple of questions on a couple of fronts. One, Maki, and this is, again, a two-pronged thing. You talked about being a police officer in Israel. And we often see, I had this conversation with the retired inspector on my show recently in regards to he was running the disorder control unit. So what did he do? He studied how they handled things around the world. And you bring those methods here. Not just from Israel, but what methods, I guess we'll say Israel since you have experience as a law enforcement officer there, what methods that you see over there that work there, and granted every environment is different, but nonetheless, what productive methods that have helped in Israel could potentially, in your opinion, be brought here to help what's going on, I guess, since we're all New Yorkers in New York City?
You see, it's a problem in the sense that America has a history that sometimes prevents us from looking at certain solutions in other countries. Like one of the first things that I said when I came here and there were some demonstrations and I asked the NYPD liaison officer, and I was still with the Israeli police, I asked him, why don't you use what we use to disperse people when there are illegal demonstrations? I said, what are you using? I said, we use water cannons with blue dye. And he says, oh, no, we cannot do that. We cannot do that. We have a history of this. I said, okay, you have a history, so you prefer to hurt people, because water is water. At the end of the day, die is die. You're going to throw your t-shirt away. Usually people don't go with their designer suits to demonstrate, right? But it was very effective in Israel because it takes time to wash it off your body, and it takes time. And again, you do. I mean, it was simple. You don't. I mean, yeah, we do have mounted units too, but now we have this discussion about using the mounted patrol at the border, right, and how horrible it looks, and the visuals of this. Mounted patrol has a horrible history in the United States, going back to the slave patrols, right? So departments are very afraid to use mounted patrols effectively. But again, the water cannons with the blue dye, fantastic. That's just one example. You cannot always learn from other countries what works there and bring it here. But in UK, they're much better trained than we are here.
You know what? You bring up a very interesting point because you talked about the visuals. We'll get back to your next question. But speaking of visuals, there's a lot of I had the benefit of going down to Nashville and doing telling some jokes for TAC Ops. It's all the SWAT teams around in the country. They all have this conference, and there was a trade show there. So there's a lot of non-lethal weapons that would be great, but the problem is they work and they're effective, and people don't want anything, even if it's effective and couldn't hurt you or kill you. They just don't want people to do the police to do their jobs effectively. And I want to show you something. This was from the trade show that I went to. It's called The Glove. And I'll show you. You're going to laugh. Here we go.
I remember this. You were with John Mulrooney, right?
Yeah, I was with John Mulrooney, a famous comedian.
Let's see what else we got here. Well, we definitely buffed out this early afternoon. And this is the Captain America section. Awesome, man. Look, just in case you wanted a shield. I wasn't even kidding, man. This is some Iron Man shit right here.
So basically, turn 9, now ready to go. We're going to make skin contact. These 2 pads, and then we'll take somebody down maybe in a couple seconds.
Really? So wait a minute. Well, you got to have the pad with you?
This is so that I don't hurt anybody.
Oh, if you want to do the practice. If you want to do like... So basically, I put that glove on and I touch somebody. It's like the hand of God touching them, right? Uh-huh. That's pretty cool. Look, did you see that? Use it. Go ahead. Can you do it?
No.
You want to take me doing it?
Go ahead. All right. Go ahead. I want to see this. All right. All right. Explain this to me again. What is it?
He's going to touch me like the hand of God. Remember to take a dive.
All right.
So, it's a conductor electrical weapon built into it.
All right.
You have to have skin contact to make it work.
Okay.
It's got to make contact on these pads. It's got to be at least 2. If I touch one, I get nothing. If I make light contact on myself, I can tell it's working. So I'm like, okay, it's light contact. I know it's working. Now I can try it on somebody else, right? It doesn't go through clothes. It doesn't go through hair, right? So I want you to face me.
So it doesn't go. So the guy's got to have a short sleeve shirt on?
There are other ways you can get around that. We're talking about that. So I'm going to have you face me. Yeah, so I'm going to grab you by the arm so that you can see that I'm not going to feel it. Just put my single arm.
Hey, do it again. Do it again. Wow. It's the Iron Man glove, dude.
How great was that? Now that is a non-lethal weapon. You only feel the shock in the area of the body that you're touching, so it's not going to go to your heart, and that will never see the light of day.
Never. And you know what? Again, I when I started teaching about policing over 20 years ago, and I for the last 20 years I've been saying the same thing. The more civilized we become as a society, whether it's United States or any other developed society, the more knowledge we have, the more educated we are, the more we resent the ability of police officers to use physical force against us. And it doesn't matter what kind of physical force. Even just grabbing by the hand, people resent it. People, people are trained, educated. Let's talk before you touch me. But they don't understand that frequently there's no time to talk. Frequently you have to stop. The person who threatens you, somebody else, there's no time to talk.
It's funny.
All these fantastic innovations. We can go back again over 2 decades. There was a time in the mid-90s that a lot of companies in the United States started to experiment with alternatives. This was probably 10 years after the first tasers started to be deployed in the United States, like mid-80s, something like that, the first tasers. And people didn't like it. So I said, what are the alternatives? And I saw one which was, again, wonderful. That there was a show. I saw it also, I think, someplace in New Jersey, there was a show. And I took my students there and I said to them, nobody will ever adopt this. Nobody will ever adopt this alternatives because visuals are not good on this. Nobody gets really hurt. It's very effective, 10 times better than using deadly force, 10 times better than using the taser. People don't like to see use of force, no matter how sophisticated it is. They don't like.
I think that parlays perfectly into what the original second question I was going to ask you was going to be, because we talked earlier about the enforcements of the mundane and the minuscule. We often think about New York City law enforcement in the vein of, okay, there's the NYPD, and maybe you give thought to the MTA police, maybe you give thought to the Port Authority police, but it's the agencies that are relatively unsung that we don't hear about that are part of this as well. We saw the New York City Sheriff's Office active in these enforcements. I'm pretty sure the New York City Hospital Police and Department of Sanitation Police as well. So for these other agencies that are tasked and burdened, I will go as far as to say, with these enforcements of the mundane and minuscule, what does it do for their morale, and how do we do a better job of paying attention to their plights too, and not just the NYPD?
I've been talking about this, and I'm sorry that I'm bringing it to the show, but I will, because maybe somebody will listen. As long as we have this decentralized police system here, we have 18,000 different police departments, 600 just in New York State, we're going to have problems. Once we start centralizing, we have one police force in each and every state, not sanitation police and postal police and the sheriffs and God knows what. One police force per state. I'm not talking about state police. I don't want anybody to say we have state police. I'm not talking about state police. I'm talking about taking the 600 different police forces, that they have one thing in common. They're allowed to use force, and bring them under one umbrella and train them equally and give them options and have better resources to elevate the standards for recruitment and selection and in-service training. We're going to see different results.
Yeah,
as
but
long
now
as we have the 600, we're going to have this conversation for the next 20 years.
You brought up something that was interesting. 3 words, 2 sentences ago, you said something close to somebody who's physically qualified. And I remember when I was going through the academy that was around the time that they basically lowered the standards, at least physically, and it got progressively worse after that. Like, for example, you had to be, I think it was 5'10" or something like that to get on the job.
5'9".
Yeah. And there was a certain weight requirement that you had to maintain, or you had to be like, the military thing that the troopers use is absurd, really. But, there was at least you had to maintain your weight. And then it got progressively worse after that. Just because, so you devalue the job. It's just a continuation of devaluing. Oh, we don't really need people that are in that great shape. And we don't need people that are that highly educated. And then all of a sudden they needed education for some reason. I don't know why.
Listen, I think from whatever I'm seeing around the country and around the world, especially because I do think that there's a lot we can learn from other countries. We need the best of the best to be police officers from each and every aspect, whether it's education, whether it's the martial arts skills, that when you go, for example, went to Taiwan, and I visited the police academy, that is police university that lasts for over 3 years. from day one, they start martial arts, right? So you don't necessarily need maybe this glove that you just showed. Once you graduate with a black belt, you're pretty much good to go if there's no, weapon that you need to respond to in a proportional way. If you're just dealing with an individual who's unarmed, you don't need the glove. But we don't invest in this. We don't invest in this because, again, we dilute our resources on hundreds upon hundreds of police departments in each and every state.
Well, I want to go back to what you mentioned about learning from other countries for a moment, and not to be redundant, but I found that to be interesting because it leads to the question: are junkets in our future? And what I mean by that is this. I'll give you an example. My buddy Don Sadawi, who did 16 years in the NYPD bomb squad, 20 years in the department. He wanted at some point, as did the other guys in the bomb squad in the late 90s, a program where bomb techs from around the world would come in and they would switch out. Members of the NYPD bomb squad go to Ireland, for example, and members of the Ireland bomb squad would come here and spend some time with the NYPD. And that was a great idea that was ultimately shot down by Commissioner Howard Safer at the time because he didn't want that junket. But when you talk about potentially having that communication and centralizing operations and gaining a better understanding, do you think junkets could be something that could be potentially revisited in the future?
We have to revisit this concept. We have to, because we are not going forward. We are talking about this ad nauseum. As I said from the beginning, everybody's talking about this, but nothing is happening. There's no real change. And the change has to be transformational. I study leadership, and I know there are many leadership theories. The difference between transactional and transformational. We are dealing with transactional concepts. Everybody's saying, let's defund, let's do this, let's do that. That's not what we need. We need a transformational change. We need to scrape everything that we have and start anew. But, for this you need leaders. And where are these leaders? I don't know. I'm hoping that we're going to see them soon. In a way, I want to say hello to Mr. Eric Adams. Maybe he will be our next mayor. He has 30 years of experience as a cop, regardless of his political ambitions, because when you become a politician, right, you have to say certain things and then you cannot say certain things. But in his blood, he's a cop. He understands what I'm talking about. Mm-hmm. He understands, as opposed to the current mayor, who doesn't understand policing.
No, not
he does not understand.
Not at all.
Yet he has a tremendous impact on the way policing is done in the city.
Oh, absolutely.
Huh?
Absolutely. I mean, I don't think there's a person that wouldn't blame him. You just look across the country, Chicago, the Lightfoot over there. That's a disaster.
Of the profession. It's again like telling Dr. Fauci how to do the vaccine, how to go about the COVID vaccine. I mean, no politician tells him you have to use this type of, medication to mix it with the other type of medication. Nobody goes to this level of detail with the pharmas and doctors, yet they go into this detail with us, with cops. I'm saying us because, I still always consider myself first and foremost a law enforcement person. Don't tell me how to use force. You never had to use force, okay? You never had to use force to take the suspect down, yet you're telling me how to do it.
You mentioned something about classes, and when it comes to law enforcement and how the more educated you get and the higher you get on the social ladder, the more you resist any type of hands-on police approach towards you anyway.
Yeah.
And it's funny because one day I went to a call. Well, we were doing a warrant thing, and there was an Indian guy in bed. His family. One thing about a lot of police work people don't realize is a lot of times you go to get these bad guys, and their family is so happy that you're taking them out. Like we showed up down, in the first floor of the house. They're telling us, "Oh, he's upstairs."
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? They're like, "Please take him, please." So we go up there. He's an alcoholic. And he's drunk, and he's very nasty. And the two guys that I was with, they were like, "Hey, come on, buddy, we got to bring you back to court. Come on, get dressed." And he's like, "Fuck you, I ain't going nowhere. Fuck you." And I'm a big guy. Like I have a short face, so when I'm on here, people don't think I'm 6'4", 250 pounds. So at some point, I just got sick and tired of hearing these guys keep begging to get this guy out of bed. So I just went by the bed and I grabbed him by his ankles and I yanked him down till they got to the front of the bed. And then I put my hand around it and I put him against the closet. I said, "You're gonna get dressed now. You hear me?" And then he goes, "Okay." And then he got dressed. And then we took him in the van and we bringing him back to court. So they're asking him. The same two guys are asking him his pedigree information. And then he goes, "I only talked to Mike." He thought my name was Mike. So he goes, "I only talked to Mike." I was the only guy that he respected because in his country, wherever he came from, the police don't do a lot of talking with the people there. They don't understand it. They don't. There's one way they want to be, I guess, policed or whatever. That's what he understood.
Listen, I mean, scholars much smarter and brighter than myself said it 60 years ago. Policing as a profession is about use of force or the implied notion of the ability to use coercive force. Mm-hmm. And whoever doesn't understand it cannot understand the profession. At the end of the day, people comply not because you are 6'4", 250 pounds, but because they know that if they won't comply, you will be able to use force. Mm-hmm. And again, I am the first one to say we need to retrain officers in the way they use force. Not just NYPD, any force in the United States. I'm the first one to say they need to be trained. But it has nothing to do with de-escalation per se. It has to do, again, with more life scenarios, with more in-depth psychological, physiological understanding of the use of force, how it impacts you as the person who uses force, right? How you lose the sight of how much force you're using, all these things that are very peripheral right now in training. But at the same time, whoever thinks that we will see a police force sometime in the future that will not use force is in La La Land. That's not a profession that will ever change.
I'd like to slip in one more question here, if I may, and that is this. How pivotal going forward, generally speaking, is a police commissioner to this process? We look at the big cities again. We focus on New York because this is a New York Central show. Dermot Shea knows a lot about policing, but he hasn't been able to do all that much. Jim O'Neill, smart guy, very nice guy by all accounts, had him on my show, and same thing. But when you see a police commissioner have carte blanche or something close to it, you see the results. Ray Kelly's second time around from 2002 to 2013, we see how much he was able to accomplish. He's arguably the best police commissioner New York City's ever had. Bill Bratton, although his stints were relatively short, we saw how much he got done in 2 years, 94 to 96, and again, 14 to 16. So I don't know if Dermot Shea will be around come January, but if he is, or if somebody else is in his place, how pivotal and how crucial, I should say, going forward, is the NYPD's commissioner, any commissioner role in any of these big cities going to be towards getting public safety to where it needs to be, and of course, having that trust with the greater community?
200 years ago, 1829, Sir Robert Peel in London, the creator, the founder of the Metropolitan Police Force in London, said, "Take the police out of politics, take politics out of policing. Only then we will be able to do something." So this is my answer to you 200 years later. As long as police commissioners are appointed by mayors who have ambition that is not aligned with effective policing, the commissioner is going to be impaired, no matter how close or how skillful, or no matter how insightful he or she is. As long as they're going to serve under the threat of being removed by the mayor, we're not going to see anything of value or importance to the force. The mayor is the one who drives the force, not the commissioner. And this is what the public doesn't understand. I am yet to see a police chief or commissioner that decides, let's go do this and that to the public. It's the politicians who is telling them what to do. You're going to arrest these people. You're going to engage in stop and frisk. Stop and frisk didn't come from within the police.
Well, it's evident because just look at the results. We had Mayor Giuliani, then we had Mayor Bloomberg.
Of course. The
candidates of Bloomberg just rode Giuliani's coattails. One term too many, by the way. with the pedal on the gas. But what was the results? We went from 2,000 homicides a year to 300. That's 1,700 lives a year saved that nobody ever talks about for over a decade.
2 decades.
1,700.
Yeah.
Well, no, but I'm just talking about when we reached that 1,700 or 1,500.
Yeah.
1,500 lives. Okay, so there's collateral damage. There's people that get stopped, questioned, and frisked, thrown up against the wall. It's not right. I don't agree with it all. But when nobody ever talks about the 1,500 lives or 1,700 lives saved yearly that are alive because of that type of police work. But anyway, listen. I just want to give a shout out to some more of the people that are here on the comments. Shannon, Georgia Peach, I'm so late. Good evening. Yeah, you are late. We got 5 minutes left. But probably, Gail Dennison, I like Rudy Giuliani. A lot of people like them too. Peter Pranzo, correct from quality of life offenses to murder. Let's go a little higher here. Let's see. Let me see. Margaret Hearn, factual breakdown. 100% Ray Kelly was amazing and right man or the right time when he came into New York. Joshua gave us a $5 super chat. Thank you so much, Joshua. That's very kind to you. We really appreciate it. If you're thinking about sponsoring on the show, please reach out to us. It's what is it? policeoffthecuff@gmail.com. And we'd love to have you as a sponsor. We have a lot of listeners right now, and the word will get out. If you got something good to sell, we'll sell it for you. When a crazy criminal is contained and then treated or soars up, they often get why the police did what they did. Listen, there's always the visuals is what we were talking about. I think that is the one thing I'm leaving the show with. So much of police work right now is revolves around the visuals, and the reality is, you don't look at a boxing match or an MMA match or even basketball when it gets physical. You know what I'm saying? You don't notice it, but those are physical confrontations. And when somebody doesn't want to go to jail, there's probably going to be a physical confrontation. It's not going to be pretty. That's what physical confrontations are. They're kind of ugly in a way.
And you go down Manhattan and you look at One Police Plaza's memorial wall, and that drives the point home. I mean, you were on the job, and a lot of cops got killed. I mean, you remember Vinny Giudice? He got shoved through a mirror. He responded to a domestic violence incident in May of 1996. The boyfriend didn't want to go to jail. He shoves Vinny through a mirror. It cuts an artery in his leg. He bleeds to death.
I remember that. Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, that was bad.
And that's just one example.
Wait, I just want to make sure I'm not forgetting nothing. Maybe there was another video here that I had. What was it?
As you are looking for something, if I may, again, I really want our listeners to understand. I am not some sort of, rough, tough Israeli who shoots first and then asks questions. No, I'm not. I value human life more than anything else. And that's why I became a cop, because I don't think anybody has the right to take somebody's life. Look at these guys who are on trial now for killing of the student, Columbia student, right? They were 15 years old, 16 years old, 17
16.
years old.
You pled guilty.
Right? So they decide to kill somebody. And they kill her.
It was stabbing, too.
Stabbing, violent crime. Let's not forget that we have these people out there. Let's not forget that.
You got to remember something. When it comes to a gun, a lot of times people get the gun in their hands for the first time. They want to use it. They don't know what it's, they just don't know what it's. So you could see that type of stupidity. But when it's a knife and you stab somebody, especially somebody that can't beat you physically, there was no physical threat. If she was a tiny little girl, there's no reason to stab her.
Yeah. Who raises children like this? Who think that they can just go and kill somebody because they feel like it?
Maki, that's the problem. They're not being raised. So oftentimes we see the parents aren't around.
Well,
the parents aren't around.
But they're in schools. Where are the teachers?
Well, that, I could tell that, and we don't have a lot of time, unfortunately, so I'll squeeze this in as quickly as I can. I was in a middle school, unfortunately, that was a community middle school. And we had a lot of these kids coming from bad homes into the streets. The teachers just didn't care. They were tired. They were fed up with the kids' misbehavior to where they just checked out. And they were so sick and tired of being sick and tired that these kids didn't get the help that they needed. And to drive the point home, at my my 8th grade graduation, we had one guy who couldn't make it. Why? Not because he was sick. He was locked up in jail on a weed charge. He was 14.
So let's reimagine teaching rather than reimagine policing.
There you go.
Reimagining policing, let's reimagine teaching and parenting.
All right, we've reached the hour here. I know Maki's busy. She got stuff to do. Mike, anything that you want to plug, mention?
Well, I have an interesting show coming up October 4th. October 4th is going to be Rich Teamsma, Bomb Squad Detective. I don't have any shows lined up for next week. I'm trying to lock some guests in. But Rich Teamsma, that'll continue the miniseries Tales from the Boom Room, profiles of the NYPD's bomb squad. There was a Brooklyn pipe bomb plot in 1997 that Rich was instrumental in stopping. So we'll be talking with him about that and some more exciting guests in the works. And subscribe to my YouTube channel, MC's Audio.
MC's Audio. There you go. And you got so many names.
A man of many faces.
Hey, Maki, what do you got? Are you in the middle of writing a book right now?
Actually, my colleagues and I just submitted the newest book today. It's about Police Code of Silence. We submitted it to production a few hours ago.
Oh, congratulations.
Thank you.
What's that process like? How long does that
Number
take?
21. But it will be open. It will be open access, so everybody will be able to download it for free. Not making money out of it.
All right. So yeah, well,
trying to improve the profession in a scientific way versus the loud way.
Well, once it comes out, let me know, and we'll have you back on the show to promote it.
You come on my show too. You're welcome anytime. I'll throw that in.
Yeah, you were great, Maki. Before you go, I just want to show you something. We talked about the album earlier. Please do me a favor. If you're a fan of the show, pick up the album. It's called Bangers. It's a lot. There's a lot of funny jokes on there. I did it during the pandemic towards the end.
Watch a movie, you're a cop. You see all these stupid things. You're like for example, they always have that one scene. It's like the two cops in the car. They just got their breakfast. They pull over. One guy opens up his coffee. You can see the smoke coming off it. It's so hot. He's ready to take his first sip. The other guy's ready to take his first bite off his bacon, egg, and cheese. And all of a sudden, an emergency call comes over the radio. What do? They just throw it out. They go license sirens. That never happens, man. It's New York City, man. Do you know how much we pay? Bacon, egg, and cheese is like $6. Nobody's throwing anything out. I'm going to put the cover on the coffee, put it there, and he's going to wrap it. You ready? Then he go license sirens. Hopefully this guy's gone so we can finish our breakfast.
What do you think? Yeah.
That's great.
It's a true story.
Great.
Well, for everybody that tuned in tonight, I just wanted to say thank you so much. It was an honor having you back here, Maki. I wish you all the best. You were always a great guest. Mike, thank you for sitting in and co-hosting with me once again. You were always a great co-host. And for everybody tuning in, thank you so much for supporting the show. It means a lot to me. And next week, we got Dwayne Gill. He's retired. No, he's still on the job. He's an active trooper in some other state, but he's also a stand-up comedian, and he's hilarious, and it's going to be a great show. And have a good week, great weekend. Thanks again.
Stay safe, all.
Good night, everyone. Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.